Podcast, Episode 39, Car Manufacturers from Around the Globe.
Cars of Carlisle is your favorite internationally downloaded podcast about all things automotive. Darren and his CFC team are ever searching for interesting automotive happenings, real stories about real car people, and fun features to inform and entertain you. Each week, the Cars of Carlisle crew brings you show topics ranging from car shows to team adventures to auto racing weekends to behind-the-scenes human interest stories from car nuts that live across town, across the country, or even across the globe. Come join the road trip.
Today, the Cars of Carlisle crew spins the globe and highlights a plethora of car manufacturers, pointing out in which country, region, and city these OEMs produce their vehicles. Your trusted CFC team is excited to take you on a virtual tour of the automotive world. Now go grab your passport. So, let's get revved up.
Hello and welcome back, Cubers, to your favorite informative automotive podcast. I am your host, Darren, and with me tonight as we take this spin around the globe is Scott.
Hey, everybody.
We're going to just get into tonight's show talking about those OEMs from around the world and a little bit some facts and figures, things that will help you in future games of Trivial Pursuit, perhaps, if nothing else. But wanted just to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Man Engineering out of Santa Monica, California, man-engineering.com. All things Subaru performance. We appreciate their support of Cars of Carlisle. And Scott, I was just looking actually at Motor Trend, getting caught up in some of my back issues, and I noticed that the 2020 Lincoln Aviator is coming out. They're going a whole new powertrain and really giving it this kind of fastball roof line and making it looks pretty cool. And so I figured, if nothing else, to talk a little bit about a couple different American vehicles that I saw while we were flipping through the recent magazine. I know there's Jeep's going to release something called a Gladiator. It's essentially the kind of their current platform, but extended with a pickup body. So it's kind of cool looking, and I know that's going to be
And mean looking.
Yeah, it's kind of it really goes back because your dad had, I think, was a Comanche, right? The old
Comanche
Jeep pickup from the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, this is going to be pretty cool. But that being, of course, an American manufacturer, we know, of course, Ford, Chevy, Jeep. But tonight, we're going to take you outside of the United States, and we're going to look at other countries. We're going to step through in alphabetical order: Australia, Britain, China, Germany, India, Italy, Japan, Russia, and Sweden. So perhaps there'll be a little bit of tidbit of information that you had heard once before or had never known. And again, if nothing else, it may come up at the next car show or car club meeting, and you can throw out that little fact. So before we put it in first gear, disengage the clutch, and head on out, let's remind everybody this is a good time to go to iTunes, rate, review, subscribe. Looking for us to grow that subscription level, and that's what helps drive all of our following, if you will. And that's what continues to raise Cars of Carlisle and those search engine optimizations and the Google searches and everything else. So you, our fans, can become part of something even bigger, and this community continues to grow. So thank you in advance.
And as well as our posts going out to Instagram, we're going to have some updates on things throughout the year here too. So go like us on Instagram, follow us on that, and you can see what's happening with the Cars of Carlisle world through there as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Okay, so let's go to the land down under, to Australia. And Australia is known for OEMs, or original equipment manufacturer. You'll hear that term, and most everyone knows it. But makes and models and manufacturers. They have in Australia a couple that I think some are aware of. FPV, which we'll get into in a moment. Holden, HSV, Elfin, just to name a couple. For the most part, they've been doing more importing over the recent years, and it's kind of interesting that Ford and Toyota both have manufacturing presence in Australia. They have Ford Australia, Toyota Australia, and a really strong segment of buyers that are proud to remain with those Aussie brands and Aussie co-brands, I should say, with both Ford and Toyota. Holden is one that's been around since 1908. They are based out of Port Melbourne, which is in Victoria, Australia. And they produce vehicles that, for the most part, are known for being affordable to nearly everyone. What I thought was interesting, and as we've been doing some research, that they've been part of GM since 1930. And they produce vehicles that go beyond Australia and are exported beyond their borders. Another one is FPV, which stands for Ford Performance Vehicle, and they ceased production in the fourth quarter of 2016, but that was, again, a spin-off from Ford itself, created in 2002. Ford Motor Company of Australia Limited, or briefly known as Ford Australia, is actually part of the Canadian Ford Motor Company and not of the United States Ford, which I thought that was a bit interesting as well. So that's, for the most part, that takes us out of Australia. We'll get back on the plane and head now to Britain. So while we're in Britain, we'll talk a little about some, for the most part, we all know, of course, Jaguar and Aston Martin, but you figure Rolls-Royce, Land Rover, Bentley, Vauxhall, McLaren, Mini. These are some of the marques that you can find in Great Britain. Some of the most widely known, obviously, we'll start with Jaguar. Been around since 1922. They're based out of their corporate headquarters, that is out of Whitley, which is in Coventry of the UK. And they were a conglomerate, if you will, with Land Rover. And after multiple mergers and what have you, they've been acquired by Ford. And then most recently by the Indian TATA group. And I know Scott, you have...
Never mind.
I know. You have something to say about that in a little bit.
I might buy a TATA. You never know.
But for the most part, we all know Jaguar and their elegant lines there. Land Rover, the other half of that, has been around since 1948. And I had read up on this that Land Rover's intent was to really challenge or go up against the U.S. as far as all-terrain off-road vehicles. Jeep being a derivative from World War II, Land Rover was going to respond and answer that with well-known rugged off-road vehicles. And of course, we know all the models now that, of course, they have the Evoque, the Discovery, and some others. But for the most part, when I think of a true Land Rover, I think of a almost like a jungle vehicle that can handle the Saharan desert, or perhaps like the African continent and some of the rugged terrain that way. Mini, as you know, that's now owned or produced through BMW, has been around since 1909, and their home is Longbridge, England. But always been, for the most part, a small economy automobile. They have been relatively idyllic and known across the United Kingdom. But as I mentioned a moment ago, and as you're aware, BMW has been manufacturing them here for some time. So Aston Martin, I'm a personal James Bond aficionado, which is, of course, British-based, is owned by Ford. Well, let's start to get into some of the luxury. I would think Bentley and Rolls-Royce should come to most everyone's mind. Bentley's been around since 1919. They're based out of Crewe, England. And for the most part, they had a strong start in limousines. In fact, they are the official limousine provider for British royalty. They're exclusively limousines based on Bentley chassis. So obviously, with the large and spacious interiors and being so over the top as far as luxury, they stand out. So then you have Rolls-Royce, which is based out of Goodwood, England. Right there as far as the high-end luxury. McLaren is yet another one, been around since 1989. They are based on Formula One technology. In fact, they bring, as you, I'm certain, are aware, they bring all that technology from F1 to the street with high-end supercars. And they were some of the first to use F1 technology, whether it be carbon fiber and others, in their road cars itself. And one other one I want to mention from Great Britain is AC Cars Limited, as in, if you think about AC Cobra and Carroll Shelby era, been around since 1901. They are headquartered in Thames Ditton, which is Surrey, UK, and the Weller brothers were the founders of that. AC Cars was previously known as Auto Carries, and in most regards considered one of the oldest British car manufacturers. They've been making cars now for over 117, 118 years. Okay, Scott, let's head to China.
Okay, so I don't know if it was just by chance or if it was selective delegation, but I ended up with China. And there are things on here that don't even look like my letters, so bear with how I'm saying any of this.
Yes, be patient with them.
So, starting off, we have Brilliance Auto, and their most notable point is whenever they formed an alliance with BMW, and the X1 version was being manufactured in China, which puts it with one of BMW's multiple plants worldwide. And that is what threw them to popularity with that. A couple of other ones that don't really have any points here, but that are major car makers from China, is SAIC, S-A-I-C Motor Company.
Are you fooling me?
Out of Shanghai, China. Okay, I can say that one. And then there's Dongfeng out of Wuhan. And they're a manufacturer from the big four automotive companies in China. They're one of the top four there. There's FAW Group. And they produce auto parts, light medium buses, and heavy duty trucks. There's BAIC Group out of Beijing, and that's Beijing Automotive Industry Holding Company. And a lot of these car companies are state owned in China, as opposed to being independent.
Okay.
So most of them are actually, and they specialize in producing passenger and commercial vehicles, along with GAC Group, JAC Group, and Changzhou. So they mostly redesign vehicles made by Suzuki, and they sell them under their brand. And it's one of the most successful automotive manufacturers in China right now, the Changzhou. And they started in the 70s. And they are, just out of curiosity, in Jingzhezhen, China. And I'm certain I said that correctly.
I think you did too.
Not. There's a lot of letters in that. There's also Photon Motor, and they produce agricultural machinery, buses, trucks, and sport utility vehicles. So they're out of the passenger type of sedans and cars, and they're more agricultural work-duty trucks. And then there's Geely, which I think you had mentioned in a couple of your episodes before.
Yes.
Which means lucky in Mandarin.
I did not know
So you can use that term as well as just the car company.
Okay.
There's BYD Auto, and they're 50% owned by Daimler. So that's their alliance and their connectivity. There's Chery, Chery, and they're out of Wuhu. And I only say that because that was a very easy place. There's Hongoi.
I just thought you were celebrating.
There's Hongoi in Changchun. I just like saying that, like I know what I'm doing. And those are pretty much the lineups from China. And I think a couple of those you probably recognize. Some of them were unheard of, a lot of them unheard of to me, but then when I read about the facts of them, they are connected in certain ways that are very relevant to what we have.
Well, I think it really shows, obviously, the automotive industry, like most industries now, are completely global, and there's a lot of conglomerates, and
we see about a dozen different names, and that's it, but there are...
Yeah, I was going to say, there's large holding
hundreds.
companies that own a lot of these. I mean, Volkswagen alone owns half a dozen major brands. So, yeah, I hear you. Well, thank you for that, Scott. We'll let's zip over to Germany now. When you think Germany, I think everyone thinks of Autobahn and luxury, great innovation. And for me, it's sort of you have form follows function and function following form. And in this case, I think that for the most part, we all know that there's a lot of great design coming out of Germany. And we are all familiar with BMW, of course, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, a lot of the technology and the speed and focus on the engines and the transmissions and what they put into the vehicles. Audi, I thought, was really interesting that they've been around since 1909 when they were actually founded in Ingolstadt, Germany by August Horsch. And in that, August created his company, which means Horsch means listen in German. And around 1909 through the early 30s, there were three other companies, DKW, Wanderer, and they created this Auto Union UG, which then these four separate entities came together, which creates the four rings that you see on the Audi emblem.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. The one thing too that I know that we all know, the high-end models of Audi, they have usually an RS badge on it. I learned through the research something new, and that was that the RS actually stands for Rennsport Racing. Huh. So it's has some significance to that. Mercedes-Benz, the TriStar, extremely well recognized around the world, known for luxury, speed, class, and that's a Stuttgart, Germany-based company. Been around since 26. Founded by Karl Benz and Gottlieb Daimler. And BMW has took existence in 1916 in Munich, which is part of the Bavarian area of Germany. And the founder, Franz Josef Papp. And in that, I thought it was interesting. We, of course, know BMW stands for Bavarian Motor Works. In German, that Bavarian Motor Works is actually pronounced Bayerische Motoren Werke. And if you look at their emblem, legend has it that it's actually a spinning propeller against a blue background. So an airplane propeller, of which they actually allegedly had built a lot of aviation engines during the mid 20th century. Huh. So that's that. With the blue and white is really a spinning prop against the sky.
And reading through the facts, even in a lot of these countries, they all started out with something completely irrelevant.
Oh yeah, like farm equipment,
yep.
Or it could be anything. Mm-hmm. So it is very interesting. 1937, Volkswagen came into being out of Wolfsburg, Germany. Car of the people, as we all know. And with that, I have said just a few minutes ago about them owning a plethora of companies, of which some of the ones that may stand out that you have likely heard of before are Seat, Skoda, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Lamborghini, and Bugatti. Porsche, what would Germany be without Porsche? Certainly idyllic with the 911 and the timeless design there. They've been around since 1931, based out of Stuttgart, and Ferdinand Porsche himself was the founder. So that's Germany. I'm going to go ahead and board the plane, and I guess we are heading off to India.
India. And give me some more easy places to say. This is great.
You're very welcome.
However, we're starting off with, as you mentioned before, TATA. They're out of Mumbai.
Now, Scott, if you had driven past the dealership and there were many new cars all lined up there,
what would be a bunch of Tatas.
In the sun.
In the parking lot.
How about that?
Got it.
Okay.
So they were, as I said before, they started out, a lot of these companies started out with something completely irrelevant to cars. They started out in 1945 as a manufacturer of locomotives. And they didn't do their first commercial vehicle until 1954. So they were all about trains to start with.
How about that?
We then have Maruti Suzuki, and they are in New Delhi. And they were... they're one of the most popular Indian car manufacturers right now, even still. And they are a subsidiary of the Japanese motorcycle and automobile brand Suzuki. So they are aligned with them as well. We have Hindustan Motors, and they are in Kolkata, India. And they are noted as the Indian ambassador motor car because most of the politicians even still travel around in the ambassadors from this company. Next, we have Ashok Leyland Limited, and they don't really do passenger vehicles, but they're most known for commercial vehicles as well. They do military vehicles, health units, rail buses, and double-decker buses. We have Mahindra, and they're the largest manufacturer and seller of tractors across the world. And they're one of the biggest vehicle manufacturers in India right now at this point in time. We have Chinkara, and they're most noted for aviation, marine, ATV, and as well as vehicles. And they actually have something similar to our Jeepster Roadster type of vehicles. Cool. They're known for that one.
Okay.
There is Opel India, Eicher Motors, Bajaj Motors, and they're the third largest manufacturer of motorcycles and three-wheelers. And they're known for low-cost cars.
Okay.
That's their claim to fame. We have Premier out of Mumbai. We have Force Motors out of Pune, and ICML out of Punjab as well.
Wow.
And that's quite the lineup from India.
Well, thank you very much.
Certainly.
Let's zip up to Italy. And when I think of Italy, I think most everyone considers Ferrari. Ferrari itself is one of the best known brands based out of Italy with their standard red paint. You can, of course, Ferrari paints in all various colors, but I think it's synonymous with that red. But they've been around since 1967 out of Maranello, Italy. Mr. Enzo Ferrari himself was the founder of that company, and definitely an idyllic brand. Followed by Lamborghini.
How do you end up with Britain, Germany, and Italy? You have all the good... and Sweden.
Well, I'd have to look back to see how this was divided out. I'm not
fine. Just saying.
Lamborghini was actually, as I have noted here, an employee was disgruntled with Enzo and actually started their own company, and that was Ferruccio Lamborghini himself. In 1963, he started his own company, and the company has grown considerably. If we go back to the days of the Countach and on through, now to the Huracan and the Aventador, they've done pretty amazing things and certainly a standout in the global scene as far as drastic design with almost stealth-like aviation design cues that they put into their vehicles. Other Italian names worth noting, certainly Maserati, Lancia, Alfa Romeo, and Fiat come to mind. And with Maserati, with a trident on their logo, they are based out of Modena, Italy, and have been around since the early 20th century, 1914 to be. Fiat has been around even longer, getting its start in Turin, Italy in 1899 by Giovanni Agnelli. He actually started the company, and it has had a multitude of history and different points to its past. But what we're finding now is a resurgence with the smaller Fiats that have hit the U.S. shores, like the Fiat 500, for instance. Alfa Romeo, another key Italian brand, been around since 1910, also a Turin, Italy-based company, and now really getting into the scene with both their sports cars and their sport utility vehicles. So they had been away and out of the U.S. market for quite some time, and now are making a resurgence here on our soil. So that's Italy. So there's more than just great wine there. There are also amazing vehicles.
I wouldn't know because I didn't have that country either.
But you do have Japan, which...
I have Japan, and these should be easy ones to say as well.
Go for it.
Here we go. Okay. So we're starting off with a very common name with the Toyota, which is 80 years old, and it's still one of the best manufacturers in the world for their quality vehicles and safety of their rides. We have Lexus, high end of the Toyota, and they're out of Nagoya, Japan, and I'm only saying the easier places as well in this one. We move on to, as I mentioned from before, the alliance that they have with Maruti. We have Suzuki. And they're known as I mentioned before, for the ATVs, outboard marine engines, and of course their motorcycles. Mm-hmm. We have Mazda out of, just look that one up. And that date back to the 20th century. They're one of the oldest auto manufacturing companies from Japan. The Miata, the MX-5, is the world's. They were conquered and coined as the world's best-selling sports car by Top Gear, even. Mm-hmm. We have Honda, and they started out as the two-cycle motorcycle engine producer and moved into automotives.
And their high-end spin-off is Acura.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that one, so I wouldn't know.
That's okay.
Okay. Then we have Mitsubishi Motors out of Minato, Japan. We have Nissan out of Minato as well. And they're still ranked, in the top 5 or 6 places with the world's top auto manufacturers.
Cool.
Moving on to the Infiniti out of Hopewell Center. That's easy.
And that is actually the premium brand of Nissan.
Yeah. We're out of Wanchai, Hong Kong. I just wanted to add more of that.
Thank you.
I'm on a roll now. We have Isuzu out of Tokyo, Japan. Daihatsu out of Osaka, Japan. And they're also right up there with being one of the oldest auto manufacturers in Japan. And they're popular for their compact cars and off-road Japanese cars. And we also have Scion out of Torrance, California. Mm-hmm. And they're one of the more popular manufacturers under Toyota, producing vehicles for the North American market. And then we have the great Subaru out of Ibisu, Tokyo, Japan, and known for their production of rally cars and turbocharged versions of the passenger cars, and the Legacy and the Imprezas.
Absolutely.
So we're right up there. And the last we have is Mitsuwaka Motors, and they're out of Kaikyamachi.
Is there anything that's notable about them?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay. That's worth...
Unnotable, but they're mentioned.
That's worth noting.
So we're good.
Okay. All right. To our final country of the night.
No.
Oh.
You're still skipping one of mine.
I'm sorry. I was flying over one of the largest.
Yeah, you're moving on to one of your more coveted ones as well.
Sorry.
Sweden.
Sorry.
I have Russia before that.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
So, we have... They're not comparable to the German or American industries, but in 2010, Russia was one of the world's 15 greatest car manufacturers. So the first one that I have here is Lada. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Volga, and their production stopped in 2007, which they say now makes them one of the more desirable vintage car models in the world.
Okay.
And there are some leaders of countries that are known to be avid fans of the brands.
Excellent.
We'll just leave that general at that point.
I remember, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have ZIL, Z-I-L, out of Moscow, and they're noted for their association with government officials as well. So they're sort of like the ambassador cars that we were talking about before for Russia. And Joseph Stalin was one of the personalities associated with that brand as well.
Okay.
The, what did I say? The ZIL. Mm-hmm. We have Moskvich out of Moscow. And after the Second World War, Russia acquired the entire production line from Opel in Brandenburg. And the first Moskvich model was born at that point, based upon the German Opel Kadett.
Okay.
K-A-D-E-T-T. And since 2009, the brand has been owned by Volkswagen.
Which is...
Or Volkswagen.
Yes.
We have GAZ. We have UAZ. And UAZ specializes in producing trucks, buses, off-road vehicles, and sport utility vehicles, as well as military vehicles. So they're some of the bigger guns with that. We have KAMAZ out of, and I'm going to give an attempt to this, Naberezhny in Tatarstan, Russia. And they specialize in heavy-duty trucks and commercial vehicles as well. And they have a huge reputation for their safety and powerful trucks.
Nice.
We also have Durways, Derways, as opposed to people calling you Durwood. We have Durways, and they're most known for the reliable, fuel-efficient, and stylish vehicles of SUVs, compact vehicles, and two-door coupes.
Okay.
We have Spetsteh, Spetsteh.
Aren't you glad I gave you all the easy ones?
I know, I love it. That's why I'm spelling them out. In case I'm not saying them correctly, I'm at least spelling them. You can look them up. But they specialize in wheeled and tracked all-terrain vehicles. And the one that they have on here looks really, really cool. And the last one that we can note here, and again, nothing notable as far as facts, but they're Dragon Motors out of Yelonvetsk, Russia.
It's really a neat name, though, if nothing else.
It is.
What do you drive? Well,
I drive a Dragon.
I drive Dragon Motors.
I drive a Dragon.
I mean, if it was being towed, it'd be a Dragon, your Dragon. But...
And if your engine's on fire, it'd be a fire-breathing Dragon.
That's...
Right. Got it.
All right. Last country. I was getting a little preemptive on Scott there, but we're going to head to the flag with the blue and yellow, and that is that of Sweden.
Oh, that's another cool one I didn't get. Okay, whatever. That's good. That's good. I'm all right. I'm not bitter at all.
No, you're not at all. One of my favorite former-owned cars was a Saab 9000S, and Saab being a former Swedish manufacturer. They actually started in 1945 in Trollhättan, Sweden. And they had a definite aviation heritage to them. In fact, a lot of fighter jets produced within Sweden and used to this day are Saab. And we all, of course, know about Volvo, which is known for its safety. And Scott, you've had several Volvos in your past. You've loved them.
They've been great.
Yeah, they are tanks. And so, in fact, I think did I read somewhere that in 2020 or 2021, Volvo is aspiring to have no fatalities in their vehicles by really giving them the greatest amount of safety possible to the occupants of their vehicles. So that's quite
That'll be a claim to fame, sure.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But the one that I want to call out that is a very new brand in the scheme of OEMs, and that's one that's only been around since 1994. It's based out of Ängelholm, Scania, Sweden, and it's Koenigsegg, and that's been created by Christian von Koenigsegg. It is, if you've seen a lot of the recent Hollywood movies, it's being featured in some of these car films, but it is an amazing vehicle. They have multiple versions that they're putting out right now, but the Koenigsegg itself, as far as high performance, is exceptional. And they are putting together a lot of energy right now into their hypercars, particularly with a hybrid blend that taking it to the next level. In fact, we just watched a documentary on the Koenigsegg factory and just how it's when they actually do something in the engineering department, they take it out to where they have their factory. It's on a former air base. They will actually test it out at that same time. They do things immediately, so it's almost like a agile testing. They don't have to go through a whole bureaucratic process, which is kind of neat because of the size of the company itself.
Probably more efficient that way too.
That's right. So Koenigsegg is actually, they have the Agera out, and they're now working. They have gone to their Regera. But these are vehicles that are exceeding 280 miles per hour. So they're among the very fastest in the entire world. So Koenigsegg, figuring that they've only been around really for 23, 24 years, 25 years, I guess it is. They've done amazing things in that short quarter century.
Cool. Do you think they're faster than any of my India, Japan, China cars?
We might.
No. Move on. Next time around, I'm picking who has what.
Somebody's a little bitter. Someone's a little bitter. It's okay.
If it weren't carpeted, you'd hear me stomp away.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you very much for being patient. Scott, hats off to you. You had some of the hardest pronunciations of the evening.
Tongue-tied. Got it. I got it.
So thank you very much for hanging in there, being a trooper.
Hey, it was fun.
If you had fun or enjoyed this episode, like all of them, definitely be sure to subscribe, rate, review, follow us on Instagram, as Scott said.
And Facebook.
That's right. Big shout out to everyone that went to the Harrisburg Auto Show this past weekend here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania area. And a big thank you again to our sponsor, Man Engineering. So loved, again, bringing this content to you. We'll try and do fun things. In fact, I have an interview lined up for this Friday. Won't tell you too much about it, other than Bavarian Motor Works would be the clue to this particular episode interview. I think you're really going to enjoy that one. So that's coming to you next week. Spend some time on the phone and on the internet, researching and emailing and making contacts. Again, working on some things on different continents, talking with a lot of individuals in this Carlisle area. So we are really starting to line up our late winter, early spring interviews. You'll have some great content coming your way.
And why not email us? Go to our website and email anything of interest that you may want us to check into.
Carsofcarlisle.com.
Locally, or if there's just something of interest that you'd like to hear an episode about.
That's a great point. In fact, we do this podcast for you. You are the Cars of Carlisle community. Scott, that's a great point. Anything that you have an interest in, reach out to us. Email us, carsofcarlisle@outlook.com. You can reach us through our website, carsofcarlisle.com, through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Reach out to us. Love to hear from you. So, we're back to the U.S. We can put our passports safely away. We had a few stamps on them from Australia to Sweden. Thank you for making this global trip with us tonight. And for now, I'm going to say drive well.
And be well.
Take care.